Welcome everybody to the 1IQ channel here for a little bit of different content. Brendan and Sterling coming at you. Typically we do football podcasts, but instead we're going to be jumping into the world of Madden. We talk about it enough and we play it enough that we figured that we might like to add a little bit of extra content here. But what we will be doing is we will be each taking a team. For instance, myself, Brendan, I am the New England Patriots, and Sterling, he's going to be taking over the New York Giants, and we will be simming as if we are general managers. We talk enough during our sports podcast, which we highly recommend that you taking a watch, similar to kind of what we do as a general manager. So we decided that we're going to actually put our preaching into action and actually be general managers. So we will not be playing any of these games. So kind of the way things will work is we will be simming every single game, but we will dictate the coach hirings, the firings, the draft picks, the signings of free agents, and just kind of going from there. And if we make it to the playoffs, we'll jump into a little bit of a fast sim, so you won't actually see each individual play, but you'll see it kind of going through that time, and once we get to the playoffs, that will make much more sense. But if any of our teams do make it to the Super Bowl, it'll kind of be like a little bit of like a play-by-play, and we'll kind of be watching the entire game just to see how it goes. But like I said, welcome, Sterling. How's it going, buddy?
Yeah, it's going well. As you said, we talk so much about, what we would do as a GM and all these things. And we wanted to go into this and not play our favoritism. Anybody who's watched us, Brendan's a big fan of the Bears. I'm a huge Steelers fan. And so we wanted to look at it and sort of pick teams that we both felt have been mismanaged over the last couple of years and need to enter sort of a rebuild or a retool. We both played with a couple of different teams we were thinking. And ultimately, it's not that we're fans of these teams. It's more just that we want to see if we can right the ship.
Yeah, I know on my own personal YouTube channel, I've been doing a similar series like this with the Washington Commanders. I think I'm just about to start year number 10, and I've really enjoyed kind of rebuilding just as a general manager. And so I know Sterling also likes to do similar things with this. So yeah, but I think each individual here will kind of take you through each other's teams. Luckily, we have both perspectives, so you're not just going to see mine or you're not just going to see Sterling's. You're going to be able to see kind of what both general managers are kind of planning. Sterling, if you would like to take yourselves and kind of go over your plan with the Giants and potentially take a look at this roster for the opening portion of this episode, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what's going to be fun is you're going to get to see both of our sort of different styles of general managers here. How do we draft differently? How do we build our teams through free agency or through trades? Like I said, I went into this, I had a few teams I was thinking about. I was looking at the Giants, the Bucks, the Saints. I ultimately thought the Giants would be middle of the road, not too difficult. I knew I was going to have to manage this Daniel Jones contract here. 4 years, $130 million. He's going to be making almost $60 million in that last year. But then as I started looking through, I discovered there were some other undesirable contracts. Like, for example, Darren Waller. He's on a 4-year contract, going to be making up to $17 million in his final year. And there were a couple others that were quite high priced. Not too bad, though. Nice young left tackle who's highly rated, so that will be a good pickup. I know I've got Kayvon Thibodeau as well at my right outside linebacker position. So there's a little bit to build off of here, but it's going to be difficult managing those undesirable contracts for sure. I know Brendan and I were talking a bit before we went live, and I was laughing because I went here and I was like, why in the hell do the New York Giants have 3 kickers on their roster? With one of them being Graham Gano at 36 years old on a 4-year contract where he's making $7 million a year. It just blew my mind. So yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. I feel like for myself and the Giants, it's going to be a messy couple of seasons as I try to manage this Daniel Jones contract that I don't agree with. I do plan to try and keep Saquon Barkley at least for another season and see if I can trade him away for some draft capital or something to help maybe bring in a young quarterback on a rookie deal that I can then justify sitting Daniel Jones until I can find a trade partner for him, because I do not agree with this contract. I do not agree with the quality level. I mean, dude is 71 overall, should not be making 47, 41, and 58 million a season. It is just ludicrous to me. Any thoughts on any of that there, Brendan?
Yeah, you're gonna have fun. Like when you initially said to me that you were planning to take on the Giants, I kind of sat back and went, he does know that it's not just the Daniel Jones contract, I hope. And
I
he's
did
kind of
not.
looking at it. Yeah, yeah, because I know earlier you were talking about wanting to potentially do the New Orleans Saints. And I said to you, that is a very, very interesting one that would be good, but you're going to be in cap hell for like 2 or 3 seasons. And you're like, yeah, like I probably won't do that just because it's going to be like $80 million down the drain that you have to kind of figure out.
Yep.
And then when you said the Giants, I was like, that's better, but it's still kind of a similar situation. And, they don't really have any wide receivers, so they're going to have to figure that situation out. But, yeah, I think the Giants is going to be a fun little rebuild for you.
Yeah, exactly. Like I still wanted a challenge. I didn't quite want the challenge of that massively over the cap that the Saints were. And the couple of other teams I looked at, I mentioned the Bucks. I looked briefly at the Falcons and the Cardinals as well. And I looked at these teams without looking at the contracts. I wanted to go in a little more blind because I'm more familiar with, say, the Pittsburgh Steelers and what they've got on contract and what they need to manage. I wasn't as familiar with some of the other teams. So I was more looking at just the talent as opposed to what the contracts were related. And I felt that some of those other teams, you have Bijan Robinson and Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, that there was a little too much talent on those teams. I wanted more of a challenge. And
Yeah,
so,
that's pretty much the way that I felt with the Patriots, where it was like, you know what, there's a couple of players, but this team is gonna like this team has some bad contracts, and
yep.
they're going to need to get, they're a kind of middle of the road when it comes to age on the roster, but there's a lot of young guys that I'm not even that satisfied with. I think
Mm-hmm.
I was telling you before we went live, you were saying like you have a few young guys that you're pretty happy to have. For me, I have one young player that I'm for certain really happy with and really happy that this is on this team and gonna move forward. But there's two other guys where I'm kind of like, okay, like I'm gonna have to see how they develop.
Yeah.
Hopefully something can be good.
Yeah, and I'll let you get into those in a minute. So, going back to the Giants here, I mentioned what some of the hurdles are going to be, and so just to give you an idea of what my mindset's going to be going into this first off season here is, as I mentioned, possibly finding a rookie deal quarterback that can replace Daniel Jones is something if there's somebody available in the draft. Other than that, wide receiver is going to be a key. I am going to need to take a wide receiver at some point, either through free agency or draft. And then I'll show you guys here the offensive line and defensive line. The trenches for me are always important, and that is going to be a starting focal point for me. So the center, the right guard, and the right tackle, they're all either very youthful and underskilled, or they're very old and getting near retirement. So I'm going to need to replace those three positions, as well as on the other side of the ball, the left end and the right end both need serious work. Defensive tackle is not bad. I do have Dexter Lawrence, second, 95 overall, superstar. He is going to be a good, solid person to be there for this 3-4 defense that I'm going to be running. And so that will be the bulk of what I'm looking at here in this first off season. And hopefully I can fill at least one or two of those positions and move on from there and hopefully have a decent team to field for the next season. Before I let Brendan get into it, I did want to mention as well, the way we are doing this, we are doing just random generated rookies. We are not doing this year's draft class for this first draft because I believe I can speak for myself. I'm sure Brendan has as well. We've both run simulations with this year's draft class in Madden. And honestly, the logic of Madden just does not sync up very well. And we've seen too many situations where Caleb Williams is going like seventh or eighth. We've got strange guys going in the 1-2 spot. And we just didn't want to mess around with this year's draft class and having them just go to bizarre selections.
Yeah, and then on top of that, it's also fun to kind of like build out real stories for like generated players. And like I know in my Commander series that I was talking a little bit about earlier, there was in my first ever draft there was a D tackle that I moved to defensive end. He is now the leading sack getter all time for the Washington Commanders. He managed to break that record in 8 seasons. He's one of the best edge rushers in the entire NFL, and so it's fun to like build out those stories. It would be super fun to have like guys like Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., and like Brock Bowers and some of those guys. But like what Sterling was saying, it's just sometimes such a pain in the ass to just see like, oh hey, you have Bo Nix somehow going second overall. And
Yeah.
it's just stuff where it's like it just won't happen that way. So yeah, and that's kind of the way that we both decided with that one. And in Madden 24, the game that we are currently playing, we can edit draft class strengths. So one thing we will talk about just quickly before we get into that, we're not going to do it for this particular draft class because as you can see here on my screen, we did do the online sim of where it just got us to the Super Bowl. So that way all of the real life stats, wins, and losses are actually in the game because we want to try to keep it a little bit realistic here at this point. But as you can see, when we go into edit draft class strengths, we are going to be doing a little bit of this, but it's not going to be this season, so it's just going to stay on normal. So we have a spinner wheel, and essentially what it is, it's going to be 4 spins. And the first spin is super strong, or very strong, I should say. So the first spin in next year's class is going to get it. So it might not be quarterback. It could potentially be, defensive ends or interior defensive line and stuff like that. And then we go to strong, then we do weak, then we do very weak. The positions that we're not going to have be affected with this are kickers, punters, and fullbacks, just because, again, they really don't need to have that other than just normal, but those 4 are always going to be there, and every other position is going to be normal. So let's say, for instance, quarterbacks gets very strong, and then we have interior D-line be strong, then defensive ends be weak, and then let's just say tight ends are very weak. This isn't what it's going to be. That's what it's going to stay for that particular draft. And then once the next year's draft comes up, everything goes back to normal. The only thing that we will make sure about with this is no position year in, year out is going to get the same thing. So let's say, for instance, quarterback had very strong. Next year, it wouldn't be allowed to get very strong. So, for instance, if it did pop up and saying like, oh, hey, quarterback got very strong again, it would be, okay, it's just a quick re-roll. And so, for instance, tackle could be normal for like 6 years in a row before getting anything else. And same thing goes for the very weak and weak. No position is going to be weak or very weak for like years and years in a row unless it just goes very weak to back to very weak to weak. But I don't ever really see that happening, unlikely. But yeah, that's kind of the way the draft class situation is going to work.
Yeah, so this should be a lot of fun. So yeah, I talked a little bit about what I had to work with my New York Giants, what my plan is for this draft. I just want to point out currently the New York Giants are sitting at a 79 overall rating across the board, offense, defense, overall, before we hit the offseason. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Patriots there, Brendan?
Yeah, so the Patriots are sitting at an 81 across the board, offense, defense, and overall. So surprisingly, a little bit better than the Giants here at the moment. But funny enough, the Giants had a better record than this Patriots team. This team, I think, when I counted, it either has 26 or 27 free agents that are going to be hitting the open market, and this team, man, is just not good whatsoever. They have some bad contracts, for instance, on some old guys. Like I look at Matthew Judon, he had 4 sacks this year. That for a guy that is being paid as much as he is, he needs to be getting more than 4 sacks per season. This team just needs a ton of help. Obviously, you look at their quarterback spot. You have Mac Jones as the best quarterback as a 70 overall. Mac Jones is not going to be something that I'm going to try to build around. We know in real life, the New England Patriots, they've already stated that they are drafting a quarterback at pick number 3, whether it's the third quarterback or it's the second quarterback, they're going to be drafting a quarterback at pick number 3. They don't really care. Comes to the running back position, Stevenson, he's good, but he's 2 years into it. He's going to be going on to his third year next year, so it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, you know what, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on running back, but it's not going to be a main focus. Wide receiver is going to get a complete overhaul. The top guy is Kendrick Bourne, and he's a free agent. Just this entire is just so piss poor, man. Same thing with tight end. There's a lot of guys that need to go. The offensive line needs a lot of work. As you can see here, we have 30-year-old Trent Brown. He's going to be making a ton of money for a guy that's only realistically going to be getting worse and worse as the years go along. So I'm going to kind of have a situation planned out. The interior's not bad. There's some young guys. Center position's not great, older. Then you look at right tackle. We're definitely going to try to re-sign Owanu. Then you look at the defense. Christian Barrymore is the best defensive lineman on this team, youngest. Talked about Matthew Judon. We're potentially going to be moving on from him. Then we look at the corner situation. We have some guys that are making some bad contracts. Jonathan Jones, I'm not really super thrilled with his contract. J.C. Jackson, I'm definitely not satisfied with his contract. But we do have Christian Gonzalez, who is 21 years old, coming off of his rookie season, going to be very, very good for us moving forward. He still has that hidden dev trait. I think in the game he is a star, so we have a young, talented corner. Our safeties are kind of what they are, but for this team, it's going to be trying to acquire a bunch of draft picks and then just kind of building for the future, because this team has so many holes that just year one alone really isn't going to solve it. And if we can get a bunch more cap space as well, that is really going to kind of be ultimately a situation that's going to be putting this team in the green as opposed to the very dark red that we're currently in.
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like you've got an uphill battle as well. It's going to be a rough first couple of seasons for both of us, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. So as you can see right here, we are in the final week of the regular season. So we know in real life the Kansas City Chiefs beat the San Francisco 49ers. So let's just take a quick little see if that is going to stay true in the real world as well, or in our world as well. It's just simming along. Once we get into the regular season, you'll have a better idea of kind of some of the things that we're talking about. It looks like the San Francisco 49ers dummied the Kansas City Chiefs. Hufanga wins Super Bowl MVP. Prescott wins MVP. Dan Campbell wins Coach of the Year. Offensive player is CeeDee Lamb. Defensive player is your boy TJ Watt. Puka Nacua wins the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Tyreek Stevenson for the Bears wins defense. So I don't know about you, but I am going to be moving on from my current coaching staff and kind of going through that little bit and kind of making new coaches, because obviously we all know that in real life the Patriots moved on from Bill Belichick. So I'm going to look for my coaching staff.
And in Madden, it's been Peter Gaffney for the last however many years, because Bill Belichick would never allow Madden to use his likeness in the game.
Yeah, which is honestly just hilarious to think about.
As for me, I am going to stick with Brian Daboll for now. I'm going to take a look and see what's available for offense and defensive coordinators, however. But I believe Daboll. I'm going to see where it goes with him. Give him a couple seasons with me giving him players, see if he can get something going.
So I'm going to go and hire Jonathan Vergara, the head coach that is available. He runs a vertical zone run offensive scheme, and he has a defensive scheme of a base 4-3, and he has the offensive playbook and defensive playbook from San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan. I guess I'm pretty much just going from that Shanahan scheme and bringing him into to be our next head coach. Emmanuel Ortega is going to be our offensive coordinator. He also runs a vertical zone run for the offensive scheme, so that's very nice pairing these two guys together, and it's going to be pretty much exactly what I want. So we'll see what we can do for the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I am going to be hiring Bob Foster as my offensive coordinator, who runs more of a West Coast spread offense using the Carolina Frank Reich playbook. However, I believe I'm still going to roll with the Brian Daboll playbook itself.
And then for my defensive coordinator, I'm going to be hiring Sammy Rios, who runs a 4-3 quarters, and that is ultimately going to be my coaching staff. And unless you have any other changes, we're going to go into the re-signing. Actually, we're going to go into the draft class phase. Pardon me.
I am still looking at a defensive coordinator here. I'm ultimately going to go with Clyde Holland, who runs a 3-4 under defensive scheme with Sean Payton playbook.
So as we can see here, just taking a quick look here at this draft class, we have a couple of quarterbacks at the top end of the draft. I'm not obviously going to say anything because I already can see what some of these guys are. And obviously me and Sterling don't want to give each other, one way or the other of what we see. But yeah, this is kind of what the draft class is looking like some fairly decent all around. Like I said, we weren't going to actually add any of those I guess modifiers is what I'm ultimately going to call it here. Just for this class, it's just normal everything. So it's a pretty interesting mix of kind of players and such. So Sterling is just at the moment doing some stuff in his coaching tree, but the next point for us is going to be looking at the players we're potentially going to re-sign.
Yes, let's.
So we actually have a first look at this mock draft here. Has the Bears taking a defensive end, the Commanders taking a middle linebacker. It has the Patriots, which is me, taking Mitch Petty, the quarterback out of Arizona. And then for Sterling, they actually have him taking Jerry Dupree.
Yeah, a wide receiver, which I don't know if I would take a wide receiver that high in the draft myself, at least not this early on in a rebuild.
Yeah. Wide receiver, definitely one of your team's top needs, but there's so many needs to the point where it's
right.
kind of interesting to say the least. But yeah, that is the draft class. So one of my first moves that I'm going to make in this series is actually franchise tagging Trent Brown. Obviously 87 overall left tackle. This is one of those guys where if I can keep him to this 1-year deal, it's going to be $25.6 million, but definitely going to be heavy trade bait moving forward in this, because I really just don't want to lose him for nothing. When you have a guy this talented, you got to try to find a way to at least make some moves with him.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. For me, I did successfully re-sign Saquon Barkley to a 3-year contract, $11 million in the first year, and I believe it was about 12.9 by year 3. So fairly decent number for the numbers I expect him to be able to put up. Looking through the rest of my potential free agents, however, I'm not seeing a lot that inspires hope for me. A lot of 70s, some 60s, a few. Um, maybe Xavier McKinney might be a good idea to re-sign, free safety. Yeah, let's see if I can get him to a 3-year contract as well.
So taking a look back at my side of things, I was able to get right tackle Mike Owanu to a 4-year deal, keeping him on. 25 years old, 82 overall, star dev trait. This is one of those moves where you kind of look at and go, you need to kind of keep this type of player around, because finding tackles that have hidden dev traits in the draft are often pretty tricky. So when you have a guy that's young, yes, we're going to be paying him about $14 to $15 million a year, but ultimately a pretty worth it move.
Yeah, you got to keep those tackles when you can. Xavier McKinney, for myself, has rejected my offer, and he thinks free agency is a better road for him. So I'm going to be a dick, and I'm going to franchise tag him for 1 year.
Yeah, because he's, what, 24, 25?
26 years old, 85 overall superstar. At the free safety position, I don't have a whole lot of talent in my secondary, so I need to keep something around, at least for now, until I can get some more pieces in place back there. So he might be
Fair.
unhappy with that, and who knows, I may shop him around for something come trade deadline week if this team is not looking playoff bound.
So just taking a look here at the rest of my free agents, like I said, we're really just trying to get younger. I would like to bring back Kyle Duggar, but at 28 years old, only being an 83 overall, he does have a star dev trait, so he might grow to like an 86 at best. But if we were to sign him to a 3-year deal, he would only start to go downhill. Michael Secchi, kind of same thing here, 28 years old, star dev trait, 78 overall. He might get up to an 82 over the 4-year contract that he wants from me. And he's just going to start dropping. Hunter Henry is another guy that I've ultimately just said is just going to allow to walk. I'm definitely not accepting Mac Jones's 5th-year option. Yeah, thank you, but no thank you. But pretty much everyone else here on the roster, there's just a lot of guys that, frankly, are either just not that great, or I'm more than happy to move on from.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I'm feeling too. I'm going to make one more attempt here at Dore Jackson, cornerback, 28 years old, star dev trait, 78 overall. I'm just going to see if he'll take a 1-year deal just to stick around for another season. And he does. So that leaves me with $42 million in cap space leading into free agency in the draft and letting go of 27 players.
Yeah, I have about $63 million heading into free agency, and I'm going to be allowing 22 players to walk.